Good Thursday night. I am Thabo Mduli, and thank you for joining us tonight here on In Focus. Well, we're back in the studio, and Linda is here with us. Of course, we're following that case very closely and unpacking some of the finer details that are coming out of there. And of course, much of what has been the focus is the understanding of crime scene management and whether suitable and adequate measures were put in place to secure that particular crime scene. But further than that, whether or not the officer in charge had the capacity and the wherewithal to be able to gather crucial information that could be the building blocks of this particular case. And Linda, good to have you with us this evening. We want to review, I suppose, something that is really critical, right? When you read literature around crime scenes are almost the main source of physical evidence, if not the only source of physical evidence. And crime scene processing, therefore, is the crux of the crime investigation. When you listen to the level of questioning, the detail that Advocate Mshololo is going into questioning forensic investigator Thabo Musia, what is his understanding of what crime scene processing was really about in this particular case?
Well, Sergeant Thabo Musia says that in everything that happened, he understood what his role was when arriving at the crime scene, and that was to gather forensic evidence. But you listen to what he had to say today around whether or not he conducted an investigation upon his arrival. The first time he arrived, you'll remember there were 2 visits to the Meyiwa house. Upon his first arrival, did he actually investigate the scene by himself, looking at, of course, everything that was happening, the people that were inside that house, and the senior police officer he arrived to? And he says he did not go beyond the points that were shown out by Brigadier Philani Ndlovu. Now, this despite Brigadier Ndlovu being a senior police officer, but not an expert as he is in that particular crime scene. He spoke yesterday about how he gathered about 8 photos and then realized that he's coming across challenges and would call a crime scene management task team that would assist in picking up or gathering this evidence. But you ask a big question around the pictures and what exactly happened to the pictures. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
But I'm saying because it was not pointed out to you by Ken and Joe.
That's correct.
You did not take a picture of that.
That's correct, my lord.
And you also did not do any investigations on top of the counter.
Before you go on, did you take pictures only on what was pointed to you by Brigadier Ndlovu?
That's correct, my lord.
So whatever that was avoided by Brigadier Ndlovu and not shown to you, you wouldn't have taken pictures of it.
That's the reason why I had to contact the crime scene management team, my lord, to come and assist me.
Now, I remember the earlier stages of the cross-examination by Advocate Defo, but even of late, he insists that Sergeant Musia was managed. Is that something that's beginning to emerge, but also some details, I suppose, in the questioning that we're picking up from Advocate Mshololo, that there was tampering with the photos?
Yes, because, I mean, the big question then, after this evidence that he has gathered, what happened to it? Where was it stored? He says that it was stored in a computer, it was put in a disk, and that original was put into that particular docket. But he says ever since he put it in that docket, it was ordered out without his knowledge, and is now in a different office. He hasn't seen these pictures or the originals of the 8 pictures that he took. Advocate Mshololo asking, so what are the possibilities here that there could have been tampering with, these pictures? Because he's supposed to be the custodian. Who are these pictures supposed to be with? Because when he comes to court, he's supposed to come with the originals. Let's take a listen.
Yes, I was supposed to be keeping it, my lord.
Uma ngabe-ke kwakwenzekile-ke ukuthi leyo CD leyo ingathathwa-ke yi-provincial kwakuzoba yimina-ke umuntu owayezogcina.
And today you would have been in a position to produce it before the court, to say these are the original pictures that were taken from the crime scene on the date of the incident. Is that so?
That's correct, ma'am.
Futhi-ke mangabe kwakunjalo-ke ingazange ithathwe-ke leyo CD leyo namuhla-ke bengizokwazi-ke ukuthi ngiyikhiphe la phambi kwenkantolo ngiyitshengise.
And because of the interference with the members of the SAPS, this court now is denied to see the original pictures that were taken from the crime scene.
No comment on that.
Yeah, certainly. Was there lack of cooperation between the investigators but also the primary uniformed police officers who were the at least first responders to this crime scene?
Well, it appears as though there was communication between Brigadier Ndlovu and Sergeant Thabo Mosia, given, of course, the fact that he received a call 4 hours later after the crime had taken place for him to get to the crime scene. He even indicates that he was shown around. But also you look at, the processing of, the evidence that was gathered and how evidence was collected. The first time there are 8 pictures. The second time he comes back, there's a management task team, a crime scene management task team that is assisting him, which then begs the question around his investigation and him being able to see other crucial evidence in the scene. He was asked today about the projectiles that were found in the scene and whether or not he saw them the first time he arrived at the scene or not. And what he did with that particular evidence, he says when he was done, he completed a register of all of the items that were collected in the crime scene, but he did not file that, register on the same day, or it was not filed on the same day. In fact, it was filed 2 days later. Where was the evidence kept? He says in his safe. He comes to court today with a copy of the register of the evidence that he collected, and he's asked, where is the original? He says, well, the original book can be made available, but how are you then going to prove that this copy is from the original book? And he said it's going to be difficult to prove.
And is there then a clear picture that is painted for the presiding judge as to what actually happened at this crime scene? And do you get a sense, maybe sitting there, you think this particular crime scene was adequately processed?
Well, at this point, you speak to a lot of legal analysts around evidence collection, and they tell you that it's still early days. And, the big question here is how his evidence is going to be corroborated, given the fact that we already have a Brigadier Ndlovu, for starters, who's already passed, who did not even file an affidavit. But, all the evidence that he says he collected and who the people that actually signed some of the affidavits he made, the statements that he made in that register saying that he compiled it, but someone else, had to sign it. So it brings about questions around how his particular evidence will be corroborated, because at this point he's conceding to have, made a couple of, one may call it mistakes, and saying that he does not know where certain originals are. Also, you look at the time that has passed in the 8 years. And one of the crucial questions he was asked by the judge is whether or not the fact that the original copies or the original of those pictures was not in his possession could impact on, this particular case, or even the quality of the pictures, and whether it would be a real representation of the pictures.
Do we know how long he had been on the job 8 years ago? I believe now, from the questioning, he's got 14 years in forensic investigation.
Yeah.
So he was fairly inexperienced at the time of when the matter actually happened.
And that's one of the questions that was posed to him. If you look at how he described when he got to the scene, saying that he got a bit of a challenge and then stopped investigating because he said some evidence he picked up, but in the first place he didn't have to pick up any evidence. He was just supposed to call the crime scene management task team at the time, and he was questioned, does this mean that when you entered that house you were not trained? Because if you were trained, you would have been able to handle the crime scene alone. Also looking at how he handled the people who were inside the home, how he handled, the family who were inside the house at the time when Meyiwa was killed. At some point he said he put them in a bedroom, and then when he had secured the crime scene, when he was alone, he then took everybody out to start the investigation. So there's a lot of questions around whether or not he was trained at the time he gathered this evidence.
What do we expect to hear next?
Cross-examination continues. As you would remember that just yesterday, Advocate Zandile Mshololo, who's representing accused number 5, only started in the latter part of the proceedings yesterday to do cross-examination. We're also hearing, Advocate Mshololo, questioning issues around whether or not he can continue asking questions around the pictures, given the fact that the originals are not available. So they're saying they're going to make the pictures available, the originals of the pictures available. So we're expecting that in her cross-examination to happen perhaps in the coming days.
Mnisi, thank you. Tonight, he is watching, of course, that case very closely and will be bringing us those daily updates.